everybody, this is Laura, City Scrapper. Thank you so much for joining me on my channel. Today I have a layout that I made for Stretch the Sketch. In Stretch the Sketch, we take a sketch that's intended for a 12 by 12 inch layout and we either stretch it into a larger format or we shrink it to a smaller one. And today I am shrinking the sketch. Today's sketch was designed by Anna Castro. And this sketch looks like it would be a wonderful sketch to use if you're creating a mixed media background. I initially was going to put some mixed media in the background, but then when I found this piece of wood grain paper on a diagonal, I decided that I was going to use this background and I wasn't going to use any mixed media today. The page that I'm making today is for my 6 by 8 inch album, and the page actually measures about 6¼ by about 8½. I just made it large enough to fit in the page protectors. I'm using this small album for a project that I started quite a while back. I took a class with Janet Fritz from Galaxy Girl Creations, and Janet is also the originator of Stretch the Sketch. And it was called Impactful Storytelling. And in this class, we used prompts that Janet created to tell our own story. And I like that because I think that in addition to having the scrapbooks for my children about their lives, I think they would really like to have a scrapbook that I created where I'm telling my own story. I know I would like to have that if one of my parents created it. This is the 10th layout that I made for this class. I have 2 more and then I will be done making layouts, and I'm really looking forward to actually finishing a project. The prompt for this layout was about being lucky, and I have my journaling done, but I needed to create a layout, so I decided to use a picture of my entire family. This was actually taken on Easter when we were celebrating Easter and Christmas, and this was one of the years where we weren't able to celebrate Christmas together due to COVID. So it was Easter, but we're all wearing Christmas hats, and it was just a crazy year, but I'm glad we did finally get to celebrate Christmas. I'm layering together a number of pieces of pattern paper. This is a really old collection. If you've been following my channel, you may know that I love to use brand new collections, but I also love to use really old collections too, and this is one of them. This is My Mind's Eye, and the name of the collection is Collectable, and I like the way the colors in this collection went really well with the colors in the picture, but they weren't too Christmassy because I didn't want the layout to have a holiday theme to it. I wanted it to be about being fortunate. I was going to use some St. Patrick's Day embellishments and titles because I had titles that actually said lucky on them. I actually just got one at a scrapbooking retreat, but I decided that I didn't want to go with that color scheme, and then I looked through my papers and I found these and I thought these would be just perfect. They go really nicely with the photo, and then I can just create a title to reflect the topic of the journaling. I printed my photo on my Canon selfie, and then I backed that photo with some white cardstock. I used 3 different colors of pattern paper. I cut them into rectangles. I layered them behind the photo, and then I used some distress ink and vintage photo, and I inked all the edges. On top of the photo, there's that red piece, and I trimmed that off of the top of a title, and I also inked that with the distress ink. And then below the photo, I have a little banner. I trimmed that off of another embellishment, and then I used some red pattern paper and I backed that so that it would stand out a little bit. I have 2 buttons on the right-hand side of my photo. One is a wooden button, and the other one is a chipboard button. Those all came with the collection. On the bottom of the layout, I have the word loved, but I want to change that to lucky to go along with the prompt. I'm using a small punch made by Marvy. It's a rectangular scalloped punch, and the pattern papers that I used on other parts of the layout, and I punched out a number of rectangles, and again I'm using the distress ink to ink the edges of them, and then I'm going to layer them on top of those tiles that I already have, and then I'll put some letter stickers on top of that so that the title will be lucky. Before I do that though, I want to add a little something to this bottom title cluster. So I took one of the stickers that was in the collection again and some red pattern paper, and I mounted the sticker on the red pattern paper, and now I'm just trimming the pattern paper so that the mat will be equal on all the sides. And now I'm going to ink the edges of that again with the Distress ink. And I'm going to place that on the bottom of the layout, and then I'm going to overlap the letters slightly on top of it. And because I shrunk the sketch to such a small format, I had to leave off a lot of the elements that were in the sketch, and I had to relocate the title down to the bottom cluster. There just wasn't enough room for it on the left-hand side of the layout where they showed it on the sketch. These letters that say loved, they are made of chipboard, and as you probably know, most chipboard stickers, not all, but most of them don't stick that well. So I did go back after I was all done with the layout and I used some gel glue to attach them down permanently. One of them fell off the layout before I was even done, and I always think it's best to adhere anything on your layout that you're not sure about down with some liquid glue just to make sure that it stays there in the long run. I thought that I might be able to add this arrow sticker to the cluster on the bottom with the title, so I inked it up again with some Distress ink, and I started trying to fit it on top of the title. I think it was just the wrong size. I realized that I had the title a little bit too close to the bottom of the layout, so I moved that up a little bit, and now I'm just arranging those chipboard pieces just to make sure they are fairly equally distanced from each other. And I again place that arrow on top of the title, but I don't end up leaving it there. I used, as I said, a title embellishment for that red parenthesis shape on the top of the layout, and I thought that it might look nice to include the other side of that on the bottom of the layout. It would make the layout a little bit more balanced, and I liked the way that looked, so I included that underneath the title, and I tried again to put that arrow someplace that I thought it would look good, but in the end I took it away, and I am going to use that little chipboard banner that you could see on the left of my mat right now. Now I'm spelling out my title. I'm using some puffy stickers from Felicity Jane, and while I absolutely love these stickers, these don't stick that well. So just like the chipboard pieces, I went in with some glue when I was all done and I reinforced these letters. I'm going to add some twine to both of the buttons. I'm using some twine from a pack of different colored twine that I bought at Michael's a while back, and I'm just going to tie a little bow on each of the buttons. I have to fuss a little bit with the bow to get it to look the way I want it to look. I'm not the best at tying bows, but with a little bit of work, it looks the way I want it to. And then I do the same thing to the wood button. I was considering using a different color twine for the second button, but I liked the way that white twine looked, so I decided to just keep everything consistent on the layout and use the white again. And then because I'm layering the wood button on top of the chipboard button, I use a little bit of foam behind it that will help to allow it to sit correctly on the layout. And then I trim down the button string, and now I'm using some ATG adhesive to help stick it down to the layout. And then I do the same thing to that chipboard button because, of course, that doesn't have too much adhesive on it either. I was thinking that the banner looked a little thin, maybe a little bit too small for that large photo cluster, so I decided to build up that banner piece a little bit. So I used some of the yellow pattern paper, and I added a little mat around the outside of the blue and red banner, and then I thought, let me add a layer of green as well, then all the colors will be reflected in the banner. And then I once again inked the edges of each of those layers just to keep everything consistent. I decided to attach the yellow banner right down to the green paper, and that helped me to be able to cut a green banner that was about equal on all sides. And then I again use the Distress ink. I just love the way that gives kind of a finished look to the edges. Once I had the new layers of the banner attached down to the other layers of the banner, I was ready to attach that whole cluster down to the background. So I put some ATG adhesive on the back, and then I place it in the upper right-hand corner. And now I am going to add a few more finishing touches to the layout. I use a chipboard sentiment that says dream big, and that kind of goes along with my journaling, so I thought that would be a good addition right above the photo. And then I added a number of brads. I really don't use brads as much as I used to, but I really like them, and there were a whole bunch of them in this older collection, and they're those old-fashioned kind, so I had to use my hammer and my eyelid setter to punch some holes, but I don't record that because it makes the whole camera shake. So I did that off camera. And this is where I was thinking I really need a little something that is on the smaller side, something a little delicate right above the title. So I went ahead and attached down that blue banner and again punched a hole using my hammer and an eyelid setter. And then I was thinking that I should really add some very small enamel dots to the photo corners. So I added some turquoise enamel dots. And now I'm going to add some white splatters. Everything looked a little too neat to me, and I had to add a little something that looked a little more, I guess, random and organic to the background. So I put some white paint on my paintbrush, and then I tapped my scissors against it, and I feel like I can control the splatters and make them rather small this way. Unfortunately, I smeared some of the splatters with the plastic when I moved the plastic, but I was able to get them off for the most part, and then I just put a few more splatters on top to kind of mask that area a little bit, and I think it ended up looking fine. I continued to add splatters on the background, but I was trying to be very careful not to overdo it with the splatters, and I think that I accomplished that. I didn't go too crazy as I often do on mixed media backgrounds. So that was the very last touch, and here are some close-ups. Thank you so much for watching Stretch the Sketch. I really hope that you enjoyed it. Please take a look in the description box. You'll find links to the videos of all of the other Stretch the Sketch collaborators for this month. And then in May, we have an anniversary edition of Stretch the Sketch, so I hope you'll join us for Stretch the Sketch next month as well. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I'll see you again soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.